Hi. This video, I'm going to demonstrate connecting to MySQL using Java and Visual Studio Code. We're going to go out and get the proper jar file. We're going to download that jar file, and then we're going to add that to a Visual Studio Java project, and then write a basic set of connector code that connects to a MySQL database and retrieves data. Some setup you'll need. You need to make sure that XAMPP is up and running, or however your MySQL is running. You have a database you can connect to. I'm using Henry Books. And you have some tables in there, and these tables have data. Henry Books is not mine. It comes from Philip Pratt's great Guide to SQL book. Just want to throw that out here, and there's his name right there. So that needs set up first. If you don't have that set up first, stop, get that working, then come back. All right, so in order to pull this off, you need a driver. You're going to have to find the proper jar file. To do so, you start with a search, MySQL JDBC driver download. A number of connections will come up. What you're looking for is Connector J. This is MySQL's ODBC product. ODBC stands for Open Database Connectivity. Connector J has been around for a while. It's very stable. It's very robust. It's probably bug-free at this point. It's like in version 8, so you should be okay with it. Follow the site. Pick your operating system. Go to the download page. Pick this web installer because you don't need the full MySQL, you just need the drivers. From there, it's going to ask you to log in, do a couple other stuff, and then you're going to download a file. And the file you're going to download is this guy, the MySQL Installer Web Community. The reason I suggested web is you don't need 450 megabytes to download when you're going to just get about 3. So you run this, and this one's kind of weird. I've already done some stuff. You're going to come to a screen similar to this when it starts up. Pick what you need. All you're going to need is the connectors. You see the languages here. You'll need for sure Connector J, and pick the top version that's in there. And you simply add it to the right. I can't do anything here because I've already done this. You simply click this arrow and then hit next and finish. Do that for every product you want. When it's finished, and it won't take long, it'll go to SQL and Program Files, MySQL Connector J 8.0. And here's your jar file. Okay? Alright, so we don't need this anymore. Don't need that for sure. So now we're in NetBeans. You're going to need a tool installed. This tool is called Java Project Management Extension. So Java Project Management Extension. Should already be installed. If you can't find that, Google it. And it's this guy right here. I'm sorry, it's called Project Management for Java. That's why I couldn't find it. There it is, right there. So this guy needs installed. Project Manager for Java, I'm sorry. Make sure that's installed and enabled. Okay, so we're now going to create a new project. Control-Shift-P is the shortcut way there. You're going to type Java and select Create Java Project. If it's not in the job, just type Java and it will appear. We're going to go with no build tools for this project because it's simple. Pick a folder. give it a name. And then it'll open up a new window, which is okay. It'll give you a source file. That thing will be named app.java. You can leave it as app.java and rename it, but whatever you call it, you'll need it again later. So just remember what you call it. I'm going to leave it app for simplicity. All right, before we start writing some code, now we need to add a jar file to a project. A jar file is a Java executable for a simplest way. It contains classes, projects, libraries. It's the typical way to distribute Java stuff. You come down here to Java projects. You go down here to reference libraries. You'll hit a plus. And then you'll browse to wherever you install that jar file. Now, that jar file does not have to live where MySQL put it. It can be anywhere you want. But it's there. You pick that jar file and you select it. This now adds that particular library to your project, which means you have the stuff that's in there. If you forget to do that or that doesn't work, you'll write all this code, you'll hit file run, you'll have no errors in your code, and then it'll die and say class not found. And the class that won't find will be MySQL connector J. So you got to have it. All right, so let's go write some code. Need a couple of imports. Import Java to SQL.star. You need Java util logging level, and this is just to write stuff to the screen and to capture errors. This isn't overly critical. There's a capital on this level. We'll use the SQL to manage our connections and pull data back out of our database. We'll use the logging stuff to log errors. Hopefully the logging stuff won't be there. All right, let's get rid of my hello world. And let's do some. Now, right now, I'm using GitHub's really cool AI project. It's helping me fix all this code. I'm going to write my own code, but the help is amazing. Okay, so what you need to do is you're going to need to build a connection to the database. You're going to need to open that database. You're going to need to create a statement and execute a SQL line across that connection. You're then going to need to parse through the result of that SQL and do something with it. There's a lot of things that can go wrong here. So we're going to slowly build this up. So I'm going to create a statement. This is what will run our SQL. I'm going to build a string which will open up my database. For those of you that are coming from SQL Server and don't always use use Henry Books is how you open a database in MySQL. It also works in all SQL environments, but when you start to get into IDEs like SSMS, it gets kind of hidden. But that's a command that will guarantee to open up a database. I'm going to do some outputs. It should be obvious what that's used for. The result set holds the output from the SQL. Now, it's angry because I haven't used any of this stuff yet, but you know that. All right, so those are some of the variables we use. All right, now these things are going to throw tons of errors. So you want to surround them a try-catch block. And what you'll catch are two things. First is a class not found exception. This means your jar didn't load right. And look how it's helping me here. I love this AI. I'm just going to take that AI. Notice that's class, app.class here. App is the name of your project. The only reason this should fire is if the jar didn't load right. Now it's angering me yet because nothing's loading up here that does this, so we'll fix that in a moment. And another one you want to check here, and this is the really important one. SQL exception. I've been teaching this stuff for decades. And every year I have a student says, Mr. Cottrell, it doesn't work. And my answer to them would be, check your SQL. And they'll say, my SQL's fine. No, it's not. It's not. Every year, 7 students mess up my SQL. And I come over and I help them. It's like, look, you forgot a period. You didn't close a quote right. SQL exception will throw the error here in code. I'll show you how to fix it later on, how to look at it, but this will at least catch it for you. And now I'll give you the error here. Here's the downside of this thing helping me. It does help me way too much. All right, so these are the 2 errors you'll need. And there are others you can throw out. The SQL exception is really important, and class not found is really important right now. Because this one to make sure your jar is working, and this one to make sure your SQL is good. While we're talking about SQL, let's add one. Enter some valid SQL. Now, what you really want to do, copy this SQL we just wrote here, go back to your MySQL environment or wherever your SQL environment is, paste it in there, drop your semicolon in, and make sure it works. If it works, you're good to go. If you do something stupid like that, you're getting an error. And if you wait to find this error when you're running your code, you're going to swear and jump up and down and swear that your SQL is perfect when it's not. So we know our SQL is good. We can definitely stay in our code. All right, so now let's actually do the database stuff. We're going to load the jar. There's another place where students constantly make errors. com dot MySQL dot JDBC. Okay? Not JB, it's JD. Now, that's a common error, and they're really easy to mess up because the B's and the D's look the same. And then a capital D on driver. Now we're going to connect. So I'm going to build a URL to connect. This is the database URL. This AI is too good. And that's the correct connection. The protocol is JDBC : MySQL. Notice it's the same JDBC that's here. : MySQL : This is the protocol we're connecting with. And I'm running this locally. Localhost 3306, the default MySQL ports on Windows. It might be different on your box. You might have to dig around to find it, but it's most likely 3306. If you're connecting to somebody else's location, all that changes is this. We have the address. That could be an IP address. That could be a web page. That could be some spot in the cloud. And then the database. Now we're going to build a connection. This is actually what it talks to. And what you need to put in there is the URL, the username, and password. My URL is dbURL. My username is root, and I'm using a default MySQL installation, so I have no password. In reality, that is very bad. In reality, you would have a password, probably something really insane. You might even not connect directly to a database. In reality, you might connect to a web service that connects to the database so you can protect the database protection. But here we're connecting directly in. Again, if you have a default XAMPP MySQL installation, root, no password. Okay, so now we need to allow SQL to execute, and that's where the statement comes into play. The create statement allows, you want to think of that DB Connect as like a bridge between your code and the MySQL. So DB Connect connects to the database. The statement allows you to run SQL across the bridge and get the data back. All right, so I already have my query built up here, my SQL. I'm now going to run this query. Oops. By creating a variable, you get a lot of benefits. One, here I don't have to type SQL inside here. Secondly, I can create interactive Java code. I create a JFrame with a drop-down box to pick authors and display their books. We'll do something like that later on. This result holds the output from the SQL. This gets weird. If there's millions and millions of records, there'll be an ongoing connection between you and MySQL. But since I only have 20 or 30 records in that table, it'll be the full table. Don't worry too much at this point about how much data comes back. That's manageable for right now. You don't care. Your databases are tiny. So now we got to do something with this, and you typically while loop it. If I could spell. So now what you do is you do something with it. The help here is the result.getString, and that's correct. But let me talk about this. Notice when you hit your drop here, you get getString, getInt, getLong, getArray, get a couple big decimal. You might remember there's a bunch of different data types for your SQL databases. String does what it says. It pulls out any string type. That could be char, varchar, nvarchar. String will pull that out. Int will pull out any integer types, as long as they're small enough. If it's too big, like if it's decimal, you have to pull out long. You also have get float in here, get double, get class. You pick the right data type that you're pulling back. Second thing to notice is that these are all overloaded. You have an int version and a string version. You can get data from the database by counting columns, or you can do it by column name. I've done both, and let me tell you, when you're counting columns and you have a 55 column result set, it's real hard to remember whether or not the column one is 33, 34, 35, or 36. You're guessing and checking a lot. Don't use numbers. So I'm going to pull out here author less. And I would be case sensitive here, even if what you're connecting to isn't, be case sensitive. You know what I want to do first? I want to put a full name. You can pull as much back as you want, or as you need. Do something with it. I'm simply going to output it. And then, of course, close. If you fail to close, eventually the Java garbage collection will clean up for you and MySQL will clean up for you, but you leave a open connection in your database, which is never safe. So do a quick look to see if I have any errors. Okay, looks like I haven't used MySQL. I don't need that because I put the slash here. Had I not put slash Henry Books, I would have had to run that. So I can comment this guy out. No sense having useless lines. No more messages up here. I'm going to run my Java code. And they're there. Albert Camus, Reva Castleman, Trudy Case, Bradley Collins and his kid, Dick Francis, Seamus, etc. All right, some things to note. You can connect to any MySQL database using this. If you have a database on there, instead of slash Henry Books slash whatever your database is, change your field names, do something different with the output. All that really changes here is the SQL, the connection, maybe the password, and what you're doing with it. The rest of this can be templated, honestly. It doesn't really change. Now, we can do more complicated stuff, like I can write back to it, I can do a lot of things, but this is the basics. I've flagged errors down here. I can also flag those errors up here and check for error returns up here and then do things inside of the while loop, but I'm just keeping my life easy. All right, beautiful. All right, so now you know how to connect to a database. And like I said, you can connect to any database in the world using this. It doesn't change. All the change, like I said, is maybe this thing, the SQL you're running, and what you do with it. Cakewalk. All right, guys, I'm done. Good luck.